What conversation or interaction with a physically normal stranger left you wondering if you just talked to something non-human or supernatural like an angel, demon, ghost, alien, time traveler, etc.? One evening in winter I didn't leave work till almost 7 PM. So I was walking home and thought, frick it, I'll cut through the park to get home quicker, even though it's really poorly lit. A couple of minutes into the park I could hear a group of people behind me and in front of me and was thinking, frick, I'm going to be jumped. Up ahead there was a lamppost with a CCTV camera on it, so I thought I'll stop there and at least I'll get jumped on camera. As I stood beneath this light, this really tall woman jogged over and stopped next to me. I'm 6 feet tall and she was way taller than me. She asked me, is it okay if I walk with you? And I was like, sure, okay, I guess. She walked with me to the edge of the park, talking about how dodgy the park was at night. As soon as we got to the edge of the park, she told me to have a good night, then jogged back into the park. It was a really weird experience. I felt certain I would have been mugged or something if she wasn't there. I walked through that park every day for about a year and never saw her again. Back in 1997, I was age 8. I shared a room with my younger brother who was 4 at the time. We used to have our grandparents over for dinner most nights and it wasn't uncommon for them to stay long after we had gone to bed. They would come and kiss us goodbye in bed when they were going to leave. This one summer's day, I woke up during the night and saw my granddad. It wasn't unusual, like I said. I said, hi granddad, are you leaving now? He came and sat on my bed and said, yes. I'm saying goodbye for now. He kissed me and then went and sat on my brother's bed and said kissed him as well. Then he left. My childhood intuition picked up that he was a bit sad. Next morning, I went into the kitchen to find my mum crying. She told me that my granddad died last night of a sudden heart attack. I said, how can that be? I saw him last night. He came and said goodnight to me. My mum said that my grandparents left shortly after I went to bed last night. I also remember that my grandpa said goodbye and not goodnight. It was quite a shock, but at the same time a little comforting too. I don't remember a lot from my childhood, but this is a memory that I won't forget. I live in a small town, with very few black people around Central Europe. I was pretty down because of a girl, and went for kebab. While I was standing in a queue for kebab, in the pub right next to it, there was a woman that caught my attention. Because of 2 things. Initially because of her race, that's just uncommon to see there. Another, the fact that I for sure never seen her before. Despite living in this small town my entire life and going around this pub every day. Another thing I noticed was that she didn't order anything. She just sat there by the table alone. Then I ordered my food. And while waiting for it, the woman leaned over the fence that separates kebab place from the pub, looked directly at me and offered me an ice cream. I accepted the offer, and immediately after that she looked me in the eyes, smiled a bit and calmly said, I love you. Then as I received my kebab, I turned around where she was, and she was gone. Vanished as quickly as she appeared. I inspected the ice cream. And it seemed okay and package was intact. It was delicious. My girlfriend had broken up with me. I was walking home crying. Out of nowhere a younger looking girl, maybe 3 or 4 years younger looking than me, comes out of nowhere and says, hi, it's dark and I'm alone. I see that we're going in the same direction and you've been crying. Should we make company? I said sure. I asked what her name was. She just replied with name. Maybe later, let's get to know each other first. Let's just talk. We had the most wonderful conversation. She was super insightful, had an answer to my every question and a comment to my every word. To this day it has been my favorite conversation ever. We walked 4 blocks and blocks. As soon as I said, hey thanks, I was super sad, but I'm not anymore. I felt super lonely and I don't anymore. This talk has been incredible. She said, okay, this is my house. I asked for her name. She said no, it's not necessary to know that. Thanks for keeping me safe. She kissed me on the cheek and entered the house. I had lived there for 5 years and lived there for an extra 5 years after that. Had to walk very often by that house. Never again I saw that girl. I'm pretty sure she was an angel of some sort. Naomi, friend of mine, was really sick with the flu. Could barely stand. He sat down outside the pharmacy while they were getting him meds ready. The girl with bright blue hair sat down across from him and said, "You aren't looking too good." They had a weird conversation and he finally asked, "Are you a hallucination?" To which he replied, "Yes, but not one of yours," and walked away. To this day he is not sure if she was real or not. There was a young woman, about my age at that time, early 20s, sitting alone at a nearly empty coffee shop. She seemed like she was trying not to cry, so I went over and asked if I could sit with her. We talked for hours. About everything and nothing at the same time. She didn't go into detail about what was going on with her, but she felt like there was no hope. I did my best to encourage her, told her not to give up, tried to give her reasons to hold on, thought of ideas that might give her a spark of hope. The coffee shop was closing. I wrote my phone number down and told her that I would love to hang out with her again. And she could call me anytime. She looked at me and told me that everything I said to her wasn't for her to hear. It was for me. I hadn't told her that I was in fact suicidal. I had originally gone to the coffee shop to think about how to best kill myself. While talking to her, I figured if I could maybe help someone else not feel the way I do, I wouldn't kill myself. At least not yet. She not only saved my life that day, but gave my whole life a new purpose filled with hope. I'm a therapist now. I help people all day. She hugged me then walked out the door. I ran after her because she forgot the napkin with my number on it. I was no more than 2 seconds behind her. I got outside and there was no one there. Happened just under a decade ago. Was walking home at night. There was seemingly no one else around until I passed by a church and saw a black guy standing outside, apparently just hanging out. This was in Bismarck, ND, where there are very few black people. He said hello and I nodded and waved. As I continued on my way, I heard him say, "You're gonna have a bad day tomorrow." The next day, my basement apartment was flooded with literal shoot from a backed up sewer line. I was going through a really hard time at the time, and I was walking back home after getting something to eat alone at a local food court. I was standing at the traffic lights and I saw this guy kind of off to my right and got a weird feeling. Like he had an aura or something. A totally normal looking man, by the way. Anyway, a few minutes later he comes up to me as I'm walking and says, "You have one of the most kind energies I've been able to see." And I'm like, oh god, is he trying to pick me up? What the frick, please leave me alone. But then he continues and accurately, like insanely accurately, tells me what's been going on in my life, as in he knows that XYZ thing is happening, but in a broad sense. Like, I think recently you probably lost a family member close to you that you love, you had a falling out, but you need this to push forward, etc. When I clearly looked freaked out, he just smiled and said, "Yeah, I have a gift. People don't believe me, but it's a thing," and just wandered off. To this day I'm like, did I meet an actual psychic or a stalker? This kinda deviates from the question, but I do think it's relevant. As a kid, my grandmother lived in a different country. She was super affectionate, but due to a severe back problem she couldn't give many hugs, so the most physical touch we had was holding hands. She always had the most tender and warm hands, even on the coldest days or when the AC was on. We used to sit and talk for hours well into teens. When I was 21, she suddenly passed away from a stroke. My last words to her before I saw her last were, "I love you very, very much," and that really comforted me at the time. In accordance with Jewish culture, we bury our dead, and since I am one of the only males in the family, I bore the brunt of digging most of the grave. I was exhausted and sad from the whole day that I didn't get to express my emotions until the evening when I got home. I rushed to my room and let my emotions out, cold and drained from working so hard and especially being outside during winter. As I lay on my bed, my entire body cold, suddenly a weird feeling of warmth felt one of my hands. My hand became searing hot, almost like I had a fever, and I felt so eerily calm and placid. I knew she was there that night holding my hand and saying goodbye. I haven't felt sad since, because I got to say my final goodbye. Not exactly a stranger, but an older man in my hometown. He was the cleaner for the local bank. One of the few black men in town. Sat next to him in a cafe. He was the most intelligent and interesting person I ever met. Like NASA intelligent. Medical research level. I talked to him several times over about 5 years and came away feeling like he was another life form. He also happened to be nice and funny. I never parted without learning something fantastic. Was coming back on the plane from a very important job interview and I thought I blew it. I was spacing out during the entire flight, and when the plane landed and I finally got up to grab my bags, an older woman 3 aisles down from me looked straight at me and said, "Don't worry, it'll be okay. You'll get it." I reflexively thanked her and ignored what she said, but a few hours later I got a call that I got the job. Only then did I remember what she said. I still don't know why she said that and how she knew what my problem was. Not that exciting, but I was walking in woods by the sea in southern England and I came across a rock formation that had a sign, "The Wishing Seat." It was rather like a giant throne, although obviously natural, not man-made. I sat on it and, entirely frivolously, made a wish. As I was sitting on it, a young family passed along the path in front of me. A man, woman, boy, and girl, all very ordinary in dress and appearance, but strikingly beautiful. So the following year I was walking along the path again, but in a different month and at a different time of day. I came across the wishing seat again and sat on it, and the same family passed by again. The world is full of coincidences, some significant, and some not, but this seemed a rather long coincidence.